This is Kristen Walter. I am a teaching and learning specialist with Crayola, and I am going to be your facilitator today. We have two wonderful speakers for our topic, which is Arts Integration Meets Diverse Learners' Needs. Sherry Sturman, you see on the screen, is our Director of Education, and she's in Pennsylvania. And Bobby Riley is joining us. He is a working principal, and as you know, if you're in a school things absolutely come first. So Bobby is going to join us when he is able to do that, which should be very shortly. But he is a principal of Integrated Arts Academy in Burlington, Vermont, and is also the 2016 National Distinguished Principal. And again, we do encourage you to join the Champion Creativity community at edweb.net/creativity. It gives you access to all of the old Ed webinar recordings and slides, the quizzes for the CE certificate. So if you do watch an archived webinar, you can take the CE quiz and print off a certificate. You are plugged into our online community, so we can have online discussions, and there are lots of free resources there as well. And then at the end of this webinar, to get your CE certificate, if you logged in live with your email address, a link with your certificate will be emailed to you within the next business day. And if you join by phone, or if you're watching this as a recording, you'll need to take the CE quiz to get your certificate. And you can find that on edweb.net/creativity in the archive section. And your Ed webinar activity is available on the EdWeb homepage when you join. And now, Sherry, I think I'm going to turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. So I'm going to just do a little shout out for Bobby Riley, who's going to be joining us in a minute. And he's got a fabulous story that he'll share more about when he comes. But I just want to let you know that he is an artist in the fullest sense, with the S on the word arts. He is passionate about visual art, as well as he is a musician that plays so many different instruments. And what I love is his story about how he uses arts integration not only with students, but also with faculty. So I know there had been some questions sent over to EdWeb before the webinar started about, was this going to be dealing with visual art or all the arts? And really, based upon Bobby's expertise, and also to let you know, Kristen Walter is an artist in many forms, a musician as well as a visual artist. So truly we will be addressing all of the art forms. Thanks for your note, Barb. Hopefully it's a little bit louder now. Thank you. So let's outline what we're going to be doing together. First, we're going to talk about why arts integration. We are very fortunate. There is tremendous, compelling evidence, research that supports the power of art to transform a school's culture and to impact on student achievement. So we're very excited to share with you that evidence. And then Bobby's going to be sharing the story of the Integrated Arts Academy and how this school redefined themselves when they decided to focus all of their efforts around the arts, right? So it becomes an academic link for the kids, becomes a community outreach, it's part of their professional development. It really, the arts are woven into everything they do, and it has become a huge drawing point for families to join the school. Then we're going to urge you to create. We hope you all have some paper handy and some markers or colored pencils or crayons. And we're going to ask you to create and then to share some summaries about what you've created in the text box so that we can respond to each other, because there's tremendous insights that we can get from sketches. So if you don't have everything handy, please grab some paper and some drawing materials. And then we like to connect this topic to the next steps. And I'm just really excited when I look at the people who are joining us from all over the world to think about how these topics about using art to meet diverse learners' needs are so relevant in education settings all across the world. And Bobby's actually going to share some stories about how students who are new to the United States, to his school in Vermont, use art as that language that helps to connect them before they're proficient in English. Oh, Bobby is here. Is Bobby? Yeah? Bobby, just turn on your camera. EdWeb says that you're live in our room. Just tap the cam and we'll get to see you. Perfect setup. That I'm introducing Bobby right at the moment he's entering the EdWeb world. So Yeah, Diana, Regina, if you want to give Bobby some advice on how to become visible, that would be great. So the first thing we like to do is to just align everyone on what do we mean when we say art integration, right? So sometimes it's called art-infused education. I love the infused word because it just sounds like it's deeply steeped, right? I get that image of something that, like a tea bag that sort of whisks over the cup of tea versus a full infusion that is really rigorous and robust and rich. And so there's Bobby. Yay! Thank you so much. So when we talk about arts integration, it is a cross-curricular approach to teaching about and with the arts to build knowledge and competencies in a variety of subjects, including the arts and those that are being integrated, right? Reading, writing, math, science, social studies, and as Bobby will tell in a few minutes, beyond the academics, so rich in building social and emotional and interpersonal skills, so knowledge of self and others. When we talk about arts integration, we also like to point out that there are other very similar teaching approaches that are very popular and in the common vernacular now. There are many commonalities between project-based learning and arts integration. Project-based learning is, tangible, relevant projects where students create. They use an iterative process to define and refine. And something that's really important in project-based learning is being sure to address real-world problems and having students be those solution finders and decision makers. Very similar kind of approach that we're hearing now. STEAM is a hot education topic, excuse the pun. And STEAM is really, again, cross-curricular approach where we're integrating art into the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math. And many of you have been watching what's going on with the new education law, the Every Child Succeeds Act. And what's really interesting is that in the final hour of passing that new national education law, an amendment was added that specifically talked about the importance of adding art to STEM. So really excited with that. So these teaching strategies are so much more than a definition, right? I mean, it's really about an approach that focuses on students' original thought. They're all inquiry driven. They all involve students creating something, problem solving. So we've come up with a short list of what are some of the commonalities between these, why we're so passionate about arts integration. But if you're passionate STEAM or project-based learning, you probably see some of these are also deeply embedded in those approaches. So we like to pose this as a poll. We'd like you to take a look at these commonalities and think about, pick your favorite reason from this list and what resonates with you. So Diane, we've set this up as a poll. If you could turn the poll on, we would love to see how people vote about that list. Okay, so for the participants, if you could tap the radio dial that represents the aspect of art integration that is most important to you, really resonates. We're just starting to see a few votes here. All right, start rolling them in. I love to see when the screen starts moving. And right now we have 175 people on the webinar. So we're going to give people an opportunity to vote here. See, we've almost got 40 participants voting. Let's see how it rolls. It's looking right now like what interests you the most is how arts integration engages students and provides them with a sense of agency. That means that they're having that sense of authority and decision-making and control and influence over their learning, and of course fueling curiosity. So, but right out behind that, right on the heels, seeing a lot of action around providing those authentic, relevant experiences that draw upon those real-life cross-curricular content. Okay, so good sense then of those two as being the most popular. Interesting, because our topic today is around honoring diverse learners, their experiences they bring to us, the languages, the cultural backgrounds, and helping to make sure the diverse learners have a voice. So interestingly, it got the lowest number of votes, but I think Bobby might turn that around for you. I think after you hear Bobby's story, we're gonna get some people excited about diverse learners and how art gives them access. So I'm going to close the poll now. And if everybody could close the poll, we're going to move into the compelling evidence. So we are really fortunate. There is a lot of research that has been done on the power of art and creative experiences, primarily around student achievement, but also around culture and teacher leadership, teacher retention. There's some fascinating studies that talk about when teachers are feeling burned out and leaving the field, schools that then shift to arts integration, they don't have retention problems. Bobby, you want to speak to that from your experience too? Yeah, I'm sorry, you have it. I was just saying I've heard Bobby tell his story about that his teacher retention problems in his school dramatically dropped when they took an arts integration approach. So more from Bobby about that in a moment. I want to point out two of the studies here. There are many that you might be interested in looking at. Actually, if you look up in the top corner of the screen, when you see what school leaders can do to increase arts education, that is a free resource available from the Arts Education Partnership. Oops, I don't know what happened to the slides, but here we go. And they also have, at the Arts Education Partnership website, Arts Edge Search, which is a resource that makes all sorts of research available on the impact of arts integration, arts education in schools. So Arts Edge Search. But you'll notice below that we have circled James Catterall's book, Doing Well and Doing Good by Doing Art. So what's really wonderful about this is James Catterall did a 20-year longitudinal study where he looked at the impact long term. So he compared students that had robust arts in their education versus students who didn't. And he found that the students who did were significantly more likely to graduate from school, succeed in college, have careers instead of jobs. And what was also very exciting was he found they were more active citizens, citizens who volunteered and voted and actively contributed to their communities. So wonderful study that you can look into. And then the next study that's circled here is by Ken Ulpis from University of Maryland. What's really interesting about his study is an insight he found about visual art. So you'll see across the board here, we're looking at arts with an S, and a lot of times we have got studies that talk about that powerful impact of drama and how students become better at reading social clues and facial expressions and understanding how to contribute to the dynamics of a group that happens in drama training. We know that music has tremendous impact on students understanding and feeling math concepts. What's interesting about this study that Ken Ulpis did is he found that visual art has a particularly unique impact on students. It increases the students' attachment to school. And while his study did not identify why, you can hypothesize that the visual arts leave a tangible item that can be displayed in the school, and whatever schools display show what is valued, right? So that when student artwork, their classmates' work is hung on the school walls, that is a tangible demonstration of what is valued and increases a sense of attachment in schools. Also, another free resource, Crayola is proud to be a member of the Partnership for 21st Century Learning, and P21 has defined 21st century skills as the 4 C's. This highlights the creativity report, but they actually have free available on the website to download research reports about what we know around all 4 C's: creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and it's very exciting that art is a key part of all of those 4 C's. So then on the bottom, the last 2 studies are published from the President's Committee for Arts and Humanities. This is work that was done from the previous administration. And let me just show you a deeper dive into these 2 reports. The first they did in 2011, it's called Reinvesting in Arts Education. And they looked at the landscape, where across the country were there programs that were really rigorous and infused art throughout learning. And they found that arts-engaged students perform better in school. They stay in school longer. They are more likely to attend and do well in college. They also found that arts integration ends up in having better attendance, fewer discipline problems, increased graduation, and improved test scores. The part that concerned them was that low-income students are less likely to have arts programs in their schools than those who are more affluent. And they found that there are about 6 million kids across the U.S. who do not have exposure to arts in their education. And as you can see from the subtitle of this report, they talk about reinvesting in arts education. I love the subtitle, Winning America's Future Through Creative Schools. So that inspired them to create a new initiative, the Turnaround Arts Initiative. They said, what if we took 8 of the lowest performing schools in the nation, did a deep infusion of the arts, and then looked at the impact? And the top box shows these remarkable results, right? That in the 3 years of the program, of 2011 to 14, these schools saw a 22.5 increase in math test scores and 12.6 increases in their reading scores, significantly higher than other school improvement grant schools. And equally, or more important, they saw a tremendous reduction in discipline, increases in attendance, increases in family engagement, all great stuff. So while Bobby's doing that, I just want to point out that he's been doing some fantastic impact look at student achievement, as well as this full range we saw, right? Discipline, parent engagement, and it's really exciting when we can say something like Turnaround Art shows this on a national scale, but then it's great to hear someone who sees it in their school.
I was going to say, that's what I love about this data is when we do travel around the country and talk with schools about arts integration and the strategies, one of the really wonderful things we see is the data that Bobby's going to talk about there on, I think it's office referrals from what I was looking at. That's often as important as the standardized tests, because we all know if students aren't in seats, they can't learn the content in their classrooms.
Right.
Yeah, so I think you can hear me now, right? Does it sound good?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Thanks. My first time presenting at a webinar, so thanks for hanging in there with me. So exactly, I think everything that Sherry just went over within the data we're a working case study for currently. And so you can see where we've been successful on the slide there. We're looking, of course, at standardized test scores is at the top of the list, but I like to say it's in the bottom of my heart. Certainly, it's still a metric of success that a lot of people still use to look at it, and we've been successful there. We've, I would say 10 years ago, we were the lowest in the state. They were talking about closing our school. Kids were reaching proficiency on standardized tests anywhere from 8% to 16%, depending on the subject and the test scores. Those have, last year, our third graders were the highest in the district with 64% proficiency on the standardized test scores. So, and that's across demographics too. The biggest demographics we've seen and shifts in are our English language learners. Special ed has had a huge jump from around 12 or 13% 10 years ago to now close to 30% proficiency. So you just see huge proficiency progress there. But again, not the most important skills that we're trying to embed in our students. We talked about engagement, or Sherry talked about engagement in the slides and the reports that she was talking about, and that's where this data report really comes in. It looks at how over the last 6 or 7 years, that red mark at the very top is saying how many students have 6 or more referrals. And it was a much larger number 7 or 8 years ago, 15 to 20%. And now it's hovering, if you look at the list, about 7% or so of students with that many referrals. So it's reduced considerably. More importantly, though, all of these referrals that you see on this list or through this graph are done at more standard or traditional ways of teaching. Arts integration or arts experiences makes up about 1% of our office referrals throughout the year. So to me, and I tell my staff, and I'm trying to push with the district as well, is that we should be doing this all the time and as often as possible, and really thinking about ways to stretch it in our general ed discussion and dialogue and how we incorporate instruction with our students. And then, we created magnet schools, as many communities do, to create a socioeconomic integration. And so we just had, before we were a magnet school, about 98% free and reduced lunch. Now we're down to 50%. We've doubled our enrollment, so we're really attracting people from other parts of the city. Talk about that. Parent engagement is, again, and truancy are also metrics of success in that parents are here often. Almost 100% attend parent-teacher conferences, up from 30, 40%, sometimes less, 7 or 8 years ago. In truancy rates, I haven't, in the last 6 years, I haven't been to a single truancy court hearing because kids are getting to school and they're excited to be here and they're engaged by what we're doing. So many metrics of success, other than standardized test scores. I'll talk about more of those too as we progress.
Oh, also before we were talking about teacher retention, you've got a great story about that too.
Absolutely, yeah. So this year was a little bit of an anomaly since I've taken over, but we had some people shifting around in the district, and but over the last 5 years we had nothing. And really, the impetus for all that was arts integration and arts experiences, because we set the expectation that as teachers of arts integration, we needed to experience the arts too. And it really created a model for us to connect with one another and develop collaborative practices in our building. So we experience the arts in everything that we do. We do staff retreats a few times a year where we really focus on, of course, we talk about the heavy stuff, arts, math, literacy, social emotional well-being, but we connect that all to arts experiences and how we work together to create change and good instructional practices and engaging practices as a community for students. So we really focus on that, and the arts was really an impetus for that, because when we play together and explore through the arts, it's really developed a way for us to connect more deeply and I think more reflectively about how we teach and what our practices are like.
Great. So Bobby, lead us through some conversations about why art.
Well, I think one of the things I like to talk about is right now, and especially in Vermont, and I think in many places throughout the country, there's some moves towards proficiency-based learning and assessments of proficiency-based skills. So we're talking about, we have something called Act 77 in Vermont. And so freshmen in high school this year are now being assessed on things other than literacy and math and science and social studies. They're being assessed on creativity, curiosity, collaboration, communication. And so you have to teach a different way in order to understand how students are engaging with those kinds of things. It's not the standard traditional way of teaching. And why I think the arts is so important, because what we're seeing is that students are truly connecting to those skills through their arts experiences. Through arts, you're learning how to respect others, experiment with ideas and materials, and observe more carefully, find voice and share ideas with one another, learn from mistakes, make adjustments. We'll talk about growth mindset today. Embrace diversity, work collaboratively, tons and many more skills. But those skills are directly related to those proficiencies we're talking about that are non-standard or non-traditional. And so it really does create that engaging environment for students to play around with their education. I think it's also just heartening for students to realize that there's more than one way to get at a right answer. And what the arts really does is allow students to explore in a way that's fun, that's collaborative, that really piques curiosity and creativity. And when they have that opportunity to do that, they can say, well, it doesn't just fit in a box. And certainly we know that we don't want students moving forward in this world the way it is right now, the way things are going to look 20, 30 years from now, to fit inside a box. We want them to be creative thinkers and really develop ideas for themselves and connect with others to develop ideas and just really be innovators in their thinking. So that's why the arts, I think, is so important and has had such a profound effect in our schools, because students really are finding the power of that, and it's engaging for them, and it also just creates more ownership and joy in their learning.
Yep. So this report, this quote comes from the New York State Department of Education, talking about why we should use art with English language learners. Tell us some stories about, because many of the students in your building are new at learning English language.
Absolutely. So 40% of our students, and we are relatively small elementary school, we have 40% of our students are from non-English speaking backgrounds from all over the world. We have 23 languages represented here. And what we've noticed is that it gets students, especially when they come with very little English skill or any formal educational background, it gets them involved right away. I think if you were to do a traditional mode of education with them, and many of you may have experienced this in your school, if you come in and you just put a math sheet in front of them, it takes away their opportunity to really engage with their learning, engage with others in their class. Sherry knows I like to tell a story. This isn't directly related to core like curricular content, but it shows the power of the arts experiences in terms of how students engage and connect with one another. We had a student who was an intensive special needs student and a student that had just arrived in the country, been here I think for 6 days roughly. And we have a strings program in 4th and 5th grade here. And they were sitting next to one another at the strings program, and I walked into the classroom to observe the strings lessons as they were occurring. And these two students were engaging with one another, helping each other with the fingering on the violins and communicating nonverbally through how to play the music and share that experience together. And I just know there's no way if you would have said, hey, sit and read this book together, or let's do this math set together, or let's learn about this social studies issue together, there wouldn't have been a deep level of connection that there was in that opportunity for this student, again, intensive special needs student, and a newcomer to our community. And I just don't think that opportunity presents itself often when we teach in real traditional modes. So you can think that that experience through strings is the same thing that's offered through experiences when we explore dramatically social studies events, or we look through visual arts, math through a visual arts lens, maybe looking at angles, or we do some work with Kandinsky and looking at angles and geometry units. Students have an opportunity to really express themselves in very different ways, and verbally is part of it, but it doesn't have to be the whole set, and it really allows students to explore a little bit more freely with the work. So it's been really successful in that way, and in engaging kids together. It's really that collaborative piece too, and how important is that in our lives to truly be able to collaborate with someone else and think together, and this really prompts that for students, and we've seen a dynamic shift in that kind of work and when kids work together.
And you can see that in both those photos. We can see that Kandinsky angle and them working together. That's great. In fact, I noticed Wendy from Virginia just asked for some ideas, and you've got that on the next slide. Here's some practical ideas. Could you explain these 3 projects?
Yes, the first project on this, the left with the students, that's a line project and geometry for those students at that time, I think were kindergartners. These are actually all kindergarten examples. So that's just line, shape, and form for elementary students, and we did that by looking at Alexander Calder's work. So that was the picture is one of the first explorations with line and creating different shapes and lines through that, and then looking at mobiles, the stabiles that Alexander Calder created, and then his lines and geometric shapes as well. And so we connected it to the math curriculum, but then we also connected the idea of circle to the idea of community too. So we sort of embed a lot of social emotional learning and connection to the artistic exploration as well, because they so seamlessly go together. So we make that connection intentionally quite often.
It's beautiful. So you went from line to 2D to 3D and then social emotional. Beautiful. Yeah. So tell us about your belief in the story of your school and how you came to being an Arts Integration Academy.
Yeah, sure. So I like this quote, one person with a belief is equal to a force of 99 who have only interests. And so I mentioned briefly that we were just in a high poverty area, so the district and the community was exploring ways to remedy the situation. I mean, one idea was to close the 2 schools in the old north end of Burlington down, to redistrict and redraw lines so students were bused around the city, and those meant a lot of that was pretty contentious discussion and meant a lot of resistance. And so 2 people, one at a local college and one at a local arts organization, pitched the idea that we could open an arts magnet school in the community, and that was received quite well. And so we jumped from there. And we had a lot of turnover at first. I wasn't the first principal. Our initial principal was, because of No Child Left Behind, fired as we were trying to transition and restructure, one of the first in the country that experienced that unpleasantness. And then we had several interims. I had applied for the job several times, and things didn't work out with my predecessors, and so I just happened to be lucky in the right place at the right time and get an opportunity to lead. And so having the historical context of transitioning with the school as they became, I was a teacher here previously, so I was in the library for 9 years prior to becoming a magnet school. And just having the historical context of what was needed in the community, I recognized pretty quickly that we have not yet really dove into the arts components and the arts experiences and had accountability around that and really embraced it fully and believed in it as a staff. And also I was really wanted to work on the collaborative practices and the climate and culture in the building. So I saw how those two things could fit together and dovetailed one another. So at first I was that one person with a belief, and now really making that an intentional focus and part of our mission. It's taken off, and now we have 99 people with that belief. So it's really moved forward, and we really were very, again, intentional and genuine about saying the arts is important. This is what we need to do, and we really think about it in everything that we do in the school. We're having an IEP meeting. We say, well, hey, how can the arts fit with this student to meet the needs and the goals in their IEP? There's behavioral issues, or we're doing restorative justice work. Well, how can the arts help repair relationships and meet the needs of the community from a social emotional well-being standpoint? And then, of course, the arts and how it connects to the academics and how we can make learning deeper by connecting it to standard curricular areas.
Beautiful. So share your mission.
So here's our mission statement, and it's kind of, I feel like we need to rework it, but there's the blue piece is the most important. But the mission of the Integrated Arts Academy at H.O. Wheeler is to explore academic knowledge through intentional arts experiences. Our richly diverse community collaborates and celebrates the world through meaningful learning and creative self-expression as we prepare students for success in the 21st century. And so, it's kind of the same generic language that a lot of people use, but the reason it's blue and it's highlighted, the intentional arts experiences. So we really want to make that part of our community, not only for connecting it to academics, but in all that we do, like I said before. So students are really privy to and exposed to many arts experiences. So you have the arts enhancement. So students sometimes will sing a song just because it connects, it'll help them learn something, but it's not directly connected to a standard, an academic standard. We have arts experiences where students are just exposed to the arts often, going to museums. We bring in so many, we're fortunate to have many great partners, writing a lot of grants with them, but students are exposed to almost weekly a presentation or performance of some sort. So I was calculating at one point how many performances students are exposed to, or artistic residencies are, by the time they leave, K through 6, it's well over 100, performances or connections to artists doing the work in our school. So it's pretty amazing. So they're really connecting to that. And then, of course, there's the arts integration, and those are those intentional experiences where we're connecting it to academic standards, and they really support one another. So integration is a lot of work to really say, take a standard and then say, well, how can arts fit in that? And how can the students show their understanding of the social studies standard through the arts, and vice versa, really? How can they connect this understanding of social studies to this artistic standard and artistic skill? So it takes a lot of thinking. It puts a whole other layer of planning, but it's so worth it because you see the engagement that occurs as they explore it, and you see actually the depth of the learning. I think that, again, the more traditional route, especially for many of our students with special needs and the language needs, that they just wouldn't connect in a way nearly as much if they didn't have this arts experience, this carrying on of the arts attached to their academic learning as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, the beauty of arts integration, right? Because we don't live in silos, little subject silos.
Absolutely, no, yeah. Well, we always talk about, integrated learning experiences across that, and the arts is just another way to do that and bring many subjects together. So it's really quite good. So I talked about our commitment. So our community, students, families, partnerships. One thing is really important, and that's really enhanced the art experiences, and it brings parents in. It brings people to the table. So we start every Monday morning with a community meeting, and we have a group of about 20 or 30 students drumming that welcomes the community in. Right there, that's an arts experience. And also, it creates a welcoming environment for the parents. So usually at those meetings, we have anywhere from 40 to 80 parents presenting with us. Some jump on the drums too, so we really welcome that sort of participation. And in those meetings, it's also started with another artistic experience. Being an ex-librarian, I've taken many storytelling classes, so I will tell a story typically on a Monday morning, and it connects usually to a social emotional message, some sort of positive vibe for the week where people can go back and use it in their restorative circles in class, create an art experience around it, but some way to just sort of provide a focus. And then we do a Students of the Week, which is great. It's not arts related necessarily. Certainly students are acknowledged for their artistic experiences, but it's just teachers write these great narratives about how a student contributed to the community the previous week. So it's not generic cookie cutter students of the week, but it's really saying, here's what you did to make our community better. So students hear, 14 of those every Monday morning for the entire school year. So it's kind of cool. But again, just welcoming people in that way is great. And so the parent involvement. Community partnerships are so huge too. We work very closely with arts organizations and non-arts organizations that are just interested in what we're trying to do and creating innovation and creativity in schools. But really hitting the street, making connections, and we've been really successful in that. So a lot of what we bring in isn't funded by the district. We work independently with these partners to write grants, create in-kind services to provide arts experiences and arts integration into our school. Something like our drama coach, which no other school has, elementary school has in the state, I believe, and certainly not in our district. And that's grant funded. So we're always making those partnerships and connecting to the community to do those things, bringing in artists and residencies, and then providing those kinds of services and experiences for students. And then just my vision, I think you have to lead by example. So I'm right in it when we're doing arts experiences. I'm participating with the staff, learning about it alongside them so that I can be a support in developing integrated arts lessons and developing opportunities for teachers to explore and be creative. And I make it really clear as the lead learner that, and the leader in general, is that if I walk into your class and you're doing an arts integration or an arts project any time of the day, that's fine. Go for it, explore it, be creative, and just have that mindset that it's okay to try it and dive in. And my staff has really developed a passion for going for that and developing it, because it can be tricky, as many of you know that are teachers, that there's this sort of push and pull relationship between what's expected of us at district levels, federal mandates. Here's what kids need to learn. Here's what kids need to do. Literacy and math, those are the scores that sort of are the metrics of success in terms of the standardized testing. And we also need to be able to explore other things and be playful with the curriculum and take risks. And when you're hearing those messages again and again from the district administration and federal educational mandates, teachers are reluctant. So as a leader in a school, really saying, go for it, try this, explore with it, and let's document and see what's happening for our students and for you as a teacher too. How's it helping your learning? Distributive leadership too, that's all part of the process. So again, empowering teachers to explore in their classrooms and also empowering them to lead in our community. At first, a lot of it was lead through the arts, show us what you're doing artistically that can support this throughout our building, and that certainly morphed to everything that we do, empowering teachers to lead in many different ways. And so we have teachers, district-wide leadership teams are about 6 people. At this school, I could not keep people off the leadership team, so we have about 15 or 16 people, and they voted to say, well, there's only a minute, people get stipend for the leadership teams, and there's only a certain amount of money, and they vote every year we'll distribute it among 15 people. It'll be less, but the work's important, and we want to be involved in leading and being part of this for our school. So again, so that artistic leadership and that engagement has morphed into just distributive leadership throughout everything that we do. And then just building creative capacity, having the professional development. So every PD opportunity that we do, I mentioned the 3 staff retreats that we have, there's an arts component involved in that. And it's really important that if we're going to ask our students to take risks and explore and learn and reflect through the arts, we need to be able to do that too. So it's one thing to just teach it and say do it. The mentality is do as I say, not as I do doesn't fit in this model. You got to build that creative capacity and show students that you're exploring in it too. It's great to go up, and I just mentioned the strings lessons again. Teachers are right beside them learning the violin with them. So it's just really powerful when students can see that. Teachers struggle with that as well. One of the things we do to build professional development too is that we have embedded it. So, you never know when resources are going to dry up, and certainly with the arts, that's always been historically a problem. And so we have arts integration blocks where our unified arts teachers are in classrooms co-teaching with teachers. And what that allows us to do is that the artistic standards, the arts teachers are learning more about the general curriculum standards and vice versa. Teachers are learning from the art specialists more about the artistic standards. And it's also good for students because they're seeing their teachers work collaboratively. And I think one of the most powerful experiences other than the arts piece, the arts integration piece, is when teachers stop and say, hey, this doesn't feel right. Let's move this way. And they, on the fly, they're making decisions as you do independently as teachers every day. Having kids see that process work through is just so powerful. And we see it all the time when we do co-teaching in these arts integration blocks. All right. Keeping the creative juices flowing at school. This is sort of a leader's guide that I made to just talk about some of the things we do at the school and some of the things I've already mentioned. So I'll go through this. Building creative capacity, we talked about that. And the ways that we do that here is just gather ideas from all corners of the school. Really, as a leader, be an appreciative audience and listen to your staff. And as a teacher, taking the risk to bring something to your administrator. Say, hey, this sounds cool. I think it could be good for students in this way. I'd like to explore it. My literacy block's going to look a little bit different tomorrow. Or, hey, I'm going to take this time to go, if you're an art teacher, I'm going to go work with the second grade teacher or the social studies teacher to try this. And here's what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. So certainly administrators need to listen to that and say, hey, if it's good for kids and it's going to be engaging and it's good for the collaborative spirit in the building, then of course I'm always going to say go for it. And I understand that it's not the case in every school, but taking the risk yourself to bring that to administration is a powerful exercise in what you believe in, what you're passionate about, and what's good for kids. Ask inspiring questions, that's sort of in line with that. And then just one of the things I like to do is promote ideas bubbling up from the staff. So like I said, if it's just one little thing and someone says, hey, let's go for it and let's give it a try, I'm totally for it. This year, for instance, we noticed that our math scores have been slipping a little bit, haven't been rising at the same level that our literacy scores have risen over the past several years in our standardized testing. So a teacher said, hey, what if we use our arts integration blocks this next year to focus solely on math and areas of deficiency in our math standards? I said, great, let's do it. And so we developed a plan for it, worked with the district math coach. The teachers owned it and are developing units around that. And so that's what we're doing this year. So we're hoping we're going to see some real strides in mathematical thinking and reasoning and getting students really engaged in their math in a different way. So I'm really looking forward to that. And that came up from an idea from a staff member who said, hey, Bobby, can we try this? And of course, I was all for it. Encourage and enable collaboration. I think one of the biggest problems still facing schools, and certainly I think if you look at the schools that are most successful, not by metrics of standardized test scores, but are most engaging, most fun, with the best climates and cultures in the building, they combat isolation. I think that teachers can still shut their doors and their classroom is their island, and they really work on just what's their thing, and they don't really share that with other people, and it's just really isolationism, which isn't healthy for the school. It's not great for the kids. I think they need to have a diversity of experiences. And so really doing that and getting teachers to work together, because I think just rate that in itself, teacher collaboration and student collaboration, I think just is the impetus for creativity and innovative thinking. But you have to work intentionally at collaboration. I know many of you can probably think of staff members who didn't give that vibe at all, didn't feel approachable, were shutting their doors all the time. You just didn't know how to break down those barriers. Just like our students, I think the same goes true for our adults in the building, that we don't all have the skills we need to be successful. And sometimes you need to work on those skills. And so as an administrator and a leader, and I would say, and as a teacher, you can also do this. Make the first move. Approach a teacher. Say, hey, let's work on this together. This could be exciting. Because, what is it? Your vibe attracts your tribe, if you've ever heard that saying. It's about saying, hey, this is what I'm passionate about. This would be good for our school, for our kids. Let's give it a try. And that's contagious, I think. So just taking the risk to do that. And we do that too. I think we're good at it, but it's one of those things that I say to my staff, it never ends. The work never ends. We continue to work on that, and we develop the skills around collaboration. And we do it through our artistic experiences, but it's really built up what we do collaboratively across the board. And of course, there's an expectation and a norm, and then we reflect on it. We reflect on how our collaborative practices are going, how the culture in the building is going, and then we look at deficiencies and we work on them some more. So it's something you can always build on. Embrace multiple perspectives. Again, that's talking about the collaborative practices. Get people that normally don't work together. If you're stuck in your grade level most of the time, just working with third grade teachers, find a way to connect to first grade teachers or fifth grade teachers. Really seek out those opportunities. Again, when I was talking about developing collective capacity to collaborate and work together, critical friends group protocols is one. If school reform initiative is something you've heard of or want to know more information about, don't hesitate to reach out. But it's just a set of protocols that gives you a real structured way to have conversations. I think that's especially important when you're trying to learn how to understand others' perspectives and collaborate and work together. It just creates a really safe environment for people to take those risks, share their thinking, and reflect with one another. Community partnerships I talked about a while back, but those are huge. you can reach out to anybody. Worst they can say is, we're not interested or we're not able to do something. But if you have a local arts organization, as a leader or a classroom teacher or an art teacher, any really thing, just make a connection. Say, here's something we're doing. We're excited about doing it, and present that to somebody in the community. And someone out there shares your passion and your ideas and would love to collaborate. You just need to find the right person. So making that known, and then welcoming others into the classroom is also really important. We've developed a whole protocol and system for, we call them peer visits. Some may call them peer observations, but for teachers to visit classrooms. And at the beginning of the year, we really focus on looking at each other teaching arts integration blocks, so we can build on that throughout the year. But they can work anytime during the school year regarding any subject, just inviting someone in to say, hey, watch me teach this today, and give me some feedback. It's not related to evaluation at all. And last year, we had close to 200 peer observations, peer visits in our school. So teachers are getting in each other's classrooms. Sometimes I sub classes to make that happen. Sometimes a special educator will fill in, but it's just being creative about ways to think how you can cover each other and support each other in doing that, because it's so important to see other people teach, and especially watching them teach the arts. That's been really helpful in providing professional development and what it needs to look like generally in our school. Growth mindset, so accept and talk about failure and reality. Again, I talked about just teachers taking risks, and that's just a healthy thing to do, and understanding that you can grow your practice. One of the things specifically about arts and teaching the arts and teaching with arts integration, many people feel like they need to be an artist. That's not the case at all. If you can teach, you can teach. You can look at a standard and say, how can I teach that? How can I be creative about teaching that? What do I need to know? And then what do I need to do to convey that to students? So it's really important to just take that risk and go for it. And it really creates safety and trust, too, when you're taking risks with your students and with your colleagues. I talked about our staff retreats that we do to really build that capacity in our building and take risks together as a group. And it's really just important to reiterate that. And then taking risks yourself sets the example for others to do it. And again, we do that through the arts so often. And just more about mindset. Many of you may have heard of Carol Dweck's works. One of my favorite reports that she wrote, or research projects she did, was around math. She gave 2 sets of math tests to students, and when they took the test, one group of students was praised for their scores. She said, hey, you got a great score on this, good job. And then the other group was praised for their effort. And then they said, hey, to these 2 groups of students, would you like to try a harder test? And the students that were praised for their grades were very reluctant, and many refused to take the harder test. And the students that were praised on effort said, sure, I'll give it a try. It just shows the power, and I think the embedded in the arts is around effort and really thinking about how you approach things. And it just goes to show that exploring, taking risks, believing that you can do better and that your effort is well praised and appreciated is so important. And again, and through the arts, it's all about effort, because there's so many pathways to right answers and so many ways to explore your thinking through the arts. It's really about just putting forth the effort to explore and play and connect your thinking, that thinking, whether there's dramatic exercise, visual arts, music, or dance, how you can connect that to your learning. And that's really effort-based. And I think that's so important for students as they approach learning and going forward, how they approach life. And then finally, this is a big one, let people play, have fun together. So again, I talked about our staff retreats. It's almost like a party. We're really exploring the theme of the day through, like our last retreat, we had, everybody had a pottery experience, everyone had a dance experience, everyone had a singing experience, and then we also did some yoga and mindfulness stuff too. Not directly connected to the arts, but certainly helpful in a school setting. So, but that's a retreat every time. So people are playing with one another. We embed them, usually one staff meeting a month. We're doing some sort of artistic experience together, or we might bring someone in to perform for us. We've been very lucky to have a nationally renowned violinist that comes visit us often, Suvin Kim, and he'll play for the staff or for the school. So it's, again, just having fun together and exploring the arts together and making it part of the culture here. And then I also mentioned that don't always concentrate on the heavy stuff, but connect to it. So through that play that we did, we were talking about restorative practices, this most recent staff retreat, we were really focusing on restorative practices and restorative circles in our school. We were connecting that to arts experiences on how that could work and how it can create deeper reflection on our part and how we can incorporate and implement that in our school. And I just think our school right now, and this is a great anecdote, I think, in terms of restorative practices, every class in the school is having restorative circles daily just about. And we've really taken off more so than any other school in the district. It's a district initiative this year. And they're taking off on it because I think we did play with it through the arts and really thought about it in a different way. And so people just really connected to it and understood it and were able to reflect on it in a different way. And they were able to see the importance of it and how it could connect to their teaching and their lives as an education. And then just explore a passion. For us, it's the arts. And Sherry mentioned it could be STEAM, it could be project-based learning. Doesn't really matter, that passion, as long as it's instilled and set in your community as a mission and a goal and an objective for you to collectively garner support around and meet around, and it can really be a positive aspect for your community and your culture, and ultimately the education that the students get. Some masks, just some other projects, and you can see I talked a little bit about how we really feel like arts connects to social emotional learning. This is a lot of this was based on character study and both two-dimensional and three-dimensional art, but again, you can see the emotion that's created, and these faces are pretty evocative of how we feel on a daily basis and how we express those emotions and how we can connect those to our curriculum and our well-being in the school setting through an artistic experience. I think the little bow right here, I think that's my daughter, by the way. I just realized that. So my daughter's at my school with me. And so how did we get here and what was successful for us? Initially, like I talked about, the district leadership saw the need for socioeconomic integration, and through the arts, they supported and envisioned magnet schools as being a way to remedy that. And so that's been successful. Professional development, initially the district did provide some graduate courses for all the staff and pay people stipends to attend those classes. But now it's really, professional development is successful because we really embed it in our community and access it that way. Expanding community partnerships been hugely successful. I talked a lot about how we're reaching out, writing grants with community partnerships with local arts organizations, and really exploring ways that we can connect those organizations together and really develop collective impact and mutually beneficial relationships so that the arts organizations are getting what they need from the school to support their missions, and then vice versa. They're really connecting to what we're trying to do. School leadership, obviously, having some flexibility and a democratic leadership process has been huge for our school, and just really setting up the mission and focusing on the arts and making an expectation has been big. And then school climate and culture has been really successful, and like I said, the arts has really been an impetus for incorporating that. And what challenges do we still face? District leadership, the superintendent that started all of this, she's been gone. Been three or four other superintendents since she left. So, and then school boards, they come and go, and so it's reteaching constantly about why this is important, what we're doing, why test scores shouldn't be the only metric of success. We have many other ones. We think just quickly, anecdotally, is looking at what makes students successful. So we look at the middle schools now, and we see that they say, well, I have to change the middle school teachers say, I have to change my teaching practice because I'm not meeting your students' needs. The way they're learning is different. They're leaning in. They're engaged in a different way. They're connecting with one another in a different way. It's funny, we had one student a couple years ago that graduated from here. He had to give a presentation in one of his social studies class, and he did an arts integration activity as he led his presentation. So he got everyone involved, acting out this historical event. So it was kind of cool to hear that. But then also recognizing what is successful about our schools too, and showing the importance of that with the district administration and the school board. That there was 18 or 20 awards given out at the middle schools last year for different things, some academic, some non-academic. About half of those students were IAA students from this school that received those awards. And we're a small piece of the students that are being fed into the two middle schools in our district. About half of the students from IAA received awards. And then there was at one of the schools, the middle schools, there was a voluntary advanced math course. So you could either go there to connect with advanced mathematics, or if you had an interest in advanced mathematics, you could go to try to learn more so that you could improve those skills. There was 18 students in that class, 11 of them were IAA students, so voluntarily choosing to make that choice. So those are the things I'm talking about when we're saying what we're doing, the skills we're embedding, taking risks. That's a risk to say, hey, I don't know this, but I want to try to do something advanced in my education. And then receiving community awards about how you communicate with each other, how you collaborate with one another, how you're a positive influence on your community. That to me is more important than any test score could be. Financial is always an issue, like I said. We are continuing to write grants for our drama position, hoping to make that a permanent part of our district at some point of our school, so that's funded locally. But right now, we've got to raise about $60,000, $70,000 a year to pay a drama teacher. So it's just a lot of work around that. So the financial thing is always an issue. And then just making sure that we're documenting, these things we're talking about and working with people to really think about how the impact the arts is having, both academically, but for those larger proficiencies that I talked about today. And then, of course, just assessing through that documentation, really assessing the success of the program and sharing that with the community.
Great. So hopefully participants in the webinar have been inspired by Bobby's story. It's very powerful to see what a vision can do to a school. And so ask yourself, right? So what if teachers and leaders in your school transformed it and helped your colleagues and got your kids, your learners, more engaged in the decision-making process, right? So we're basically asking you to think about being a chief creative officer and what you could do in your school. And think about how a team of chief creative officers could really enrich your school, and would love for you to be thinking of ways that you could embed these practices. You could explain the research we started off with. Bobby talked a lot about collaboration, so very intentional in collaborating with your colleagues and bringing the school culture that Bobby has talked about to your school, right? So one of the things that we urge you to do is to sketch your school culture. Start to visualize what it feels like to be in your school, and then use those sketches, right? You can create it, you can present it to each other, respond to each other, and connect with your colleagues on it, so that you would actually be visualizing, making your thinking visual, right? So some prompts here for your sketches, right? How does it feel? Where is collaboration shining? Where are the creative hotspots in your school? Draw a sketch of your school that shows your communication flow. And then share your sketch with another. So sometimes that kind of a visual can give us insights that we might otherwise miss. So I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. We'd just like you each to think about your next steps and how you could use art integration to meet diverse learners' needs, how you might share this compelling evidence, and how Bobby's story, the Integrated Arts Academy, inspired you. So what kind of questions do you have? I know we just barely have a minute now.
Sherry,
I know Diane.
Yeah. There's one question. We were answering a lot of the questions in the chat bar, but one of the questions was to Bobby was, how many staff meetings do you have a month?
We have one every Tuesday.
Okay. I think people are sort of visualizing your school, one, how awesome your school culture was, but that was one of the questions that I think was sort of helping them put it into concrete practice.
Yeah, and then the three retreats yearly. We do one at the very beginning of the year, one mid-year. I advocated heavily when I took over that we get a day mid-year to have off and be a non-student day so we could work on culture and climate in our building. And that was originally just given to the magnet schools, but now every school does it, which is great. I think it's a good thing, good practice to have for everybody. Then we have one at the end of the year, too.
Okay, that sounds wonderful.
So did you see the question in the text box, Bobby? Patricia from Pennsylvania is asking about how that works. Do you do early dismissal?
For the early dismissal for the staff retreat?
It's a text. You can see it on here. Patricia, you want to ask some more for your staff meeting?
Oh.
I think maybe she's thinking, are they after school? Yeah.
they're after school. They're just an hour. So we just try to pack as much as we can. So
Yeah.
staff meetings are after the school day for an hour every Tuesday.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We got some other questions if people want to stay on the line. We still have a full room. We still have a full room with 170 people, so as long as you can stay, we'll just ask a few questions. So Nicole from Pennsylvania was asking for some suggestions about collaborating art teachers and colleagues. Do you have some stories to share on that, Bobby?
Well, yeah, I mean, we embed it in our schedule. So there's specific arts integration blocks where a classroom teacher works with a unified arts specialist, an art specialist. So that's one way that we did it. But outside that, I mean, part of what we did before we had that schedule, teachers and art specialists would just seek one another out and say, here's an idea I have. Or a teacher would approach a art specialist and say, here's something I'd like to try with the arts, but I'm not sure how to do it. So can you help me with this? And so it's just that collaborative piece again. And so they work together now on a regular basis because we've embedded it in our schedule. So it's an important part of what we need to do. And so, but it's really just seeking it out and then just working on each other's ideas around teaching and learning and saying, well, here's what I could provide here. I need to know more about the artistic skill, and then vice versa. What the art teacher knows to know more about the with the content standard, and then ultimately with more of that work, you sort of again embedded professional development. You're learning about those standards from each other on either side. So it's a really powerful experience to share that teaching together.
Great.
Oh, here's a question. They do have separate standalone art classes. Yes, so they have art. Kindergarten and first grade have 45 minutes a week, and everybody else has an hour a week, a standalone, and then music, same kind of thing. And PE and dance is sort of integrated, so they do a little bit of that. So they have standalone classes as well. This is something that was additionally put into the schedule in terms of the arts integration block. So they get both. So realistically, they're getting more arts experiences than any other, as they should, being the art school, but they get more experiences than any standard school in the district.
Right. So we have some questions before Kristen does the wrap-up. I just want to address Gail and Allison's question. So we don't make the PowerPoint available, but you can have the archived webinar video. So Diane is recording this, and so the recording is available to be watched again, to be shared with your colleagues. So one of you was asking about the sketch prompts, and that would be in the recording, and the full PowerPoint is the basis of that recording. So Kristen, you want to walk us through some of the closing steps?
Sure, absolutely. So I think it's skipping some. Our next webinar is Innovations and Inventions, Solving Problems on STEAM. There were some questions in the chat bar of if we were going to do a math or a science webinar. Definitely tune into this one. This is where it's all brought together under the umbrella of STEAM. And that will be January 18th in 2018 at 4 p.m. In this community. And then to get your certificate from watching today, if you logged in live with your email address, you will get a link in the next business day to print your certificate. But if you joined by phone or if you're watching this as a recording, you will need to go into the archives under edweb.net/creativity to find the CE quiz, which is there, and take that. And then we just really invite you to join the community. Again, it's edweb.net/creativity. You have all of the resources. It's completely free. The recording, slides, the quizzes for the CE certificates, online discussions, and other resources. And I think we'd really like to thank Bobby for being here today. It was wonderful, very informative, and lots of rich discussion coming out of it. And Sherry, it was, again, thank you for putting all of this together and making this available to everyone.
Yeah, I want to do a shout out for Bobby. Every time I hear the story of your school and your kids and how you integrate art, I get inspired. And so I've had the pleasure of hearing you tell the story a couple times, and every time you add fresh new insights, and I love it. It's you really have embedded this fully in an exemplary model of what schools become when they infuse the arts.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. It was fun doing it. My first webinar. It's done. Whew, we're good to go.
You survived.
And I saw
Awesome.
and I saw some questions in there. I just put my email in the chat box. So if people want to reach out, if I can provide, I know someone wanted the master schedule. I'm happy to provide resources and help out I can if you want to establish this in your school.
Thank you.
Super. Great. Thank you.
Great.
All right. See everybody in January. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.